Tēnā koutou katoa kuhu manei I tēnei wā. He mihi tino mahana. Warm greetings to you all and welcome. Welcome to our briefing this morning, and as the partnership we'll finish how we always start. So we will start with karakia as being the way for our partnership throughout. So, meno tātou. Kia tau ngā manakitanga o te wahi naro. Ki rongo ki tēnā o tātou. Kia mahia te hua mākihikihi ki tō te kupu, tō te mana, tō te aroha, tō te reo Māori, kia tuturu, kia wakamoa, kia tīna. Haumia hui e. Let the strength and life force of our ancestors be with each and every one of us, freeing our path from obstruction so that our words, power, love and language are upheld. We permanently fix it, establish it and understand it forward together. Warm greetings to you all again, and welcome to the release of He Waka Eke Noa, the He Waka Eke Noa Recommendations Report. I have been told that I need to do the health and safety briefing, and it is Wellington, so I will do it. It looks longer than my address, so just bear with me, folks. So, first of all, if there is an accident or injury during the event, please contact the operations coordinator out the back, and that will bring first aid. The waripaku, the toilets are out there and by the silver lifts. In the event of a fire alarm, please make your way out of the auditorium and exit the building via the Aiken Street entrance. Turn left and go via the footpath across Guthrie Lane to outside the building, 100 metres up the road. In the event of an earthquake, drop, cover, hold. So I'm told here to immediately assume the brace position by leaning forward in your seat. Watch your camera. Yeah. Place your head on your lap and your hands over the back of your head. Once the shaking has stopped, please wait for instructions from the staff. I'm told that this is one of the safest buildings in Wellington, so we should all feel okay. In the event of any other alert or emergency, please stay calm and await instructions from the library staff. Thank you, everybody. As I said, we're here today for the formal public release of the He Waka Eke Noa recommendations to ministers on pricing agricultural emissions. My name is Michael Ahi. I've had the privilege of chairing the He Waka Eke Noa steering group for the last 2 years. I'm going to make a few introductory comments, and then we're going to have some of our partners to say a few words. Firstly, can I acknowledge, you'll see on the screen the 13 He Waka Eke Noa partners, including the Ministry for Primary Industries and the Ministry for the Environment. All of these organisations have put in an incredible amount of work into developing what we'll talk about today, which we think is a very practical and effective approach to reducing agricultural emissions. So I want to acknowledge those, and we've got, and I'll introduce those on the stage in a moment. I also want to acknowledge the many supporters who have contributed to our work, and some of those are in the auditorium today. That includes the Crown Research Institutes, and we've got Sue Bidrose here from CEO of Ag Research, so kia ora to you, Sue. The other CRIs, for example, Scion and Manaki Whenua, Plant and Food Research, the Pastoral Greenhouse Gas Research Consortium, the New Zealand Agricultural Greenhouse Gas Research Centre, Department of Conservation, and many others who have just put in a huge amount of support work for us. A couple of partners that can't be with us today, Irrigation New Zealand and the Dairy Industry Association both have pre-planned events with their members, so they have given their apologies today. And Beef and Lamb New Zealand Chair Andrew Morrison, who's got a serious case of FOMO, he is overseas at trade meetings, and Director Nikki Hislop is here in his stead and will be ably supported by Nikki here today. Horticulture New Zealand and Federated Farmers support the recommendations and have people here today, but in the interest of brevity, so that we can get to morning tea at some point, in the interest of we'll have only some partners on stage, we'll be addressing you today. And lastly, just in terms of acknowledgements, our government partners are not signatories to the report, as they have to be able to provide independent advice to ministers on our recommendations. We have representatives from the Ministry of Primary Industries and the Ministry for the Environment here, and they will be available afterwards if you wish to talk to them. So, ladies and gentlemen, what are we recommending? So the pack obviously identifies that fully, but what we are recommending is that that agricultural emissions are priced through a farm-level split gas levy with built-in incentives to reduce emissions and sequester carbon. So what that means is that we as a partnership were set up to consider alternatives to pricing agricultural emissions through the New Zealand Emissions Trading Scheme. And as we will develop, and I will talk a little bit more, we are confident that this is the best option to help farmers and growers transition to lower emissions food production while maintaining viable businesses, and importantly, continuing to provide sustainable food production to our very discerning international and domestic customers. So let's break down what we're recommending. Firstly, farm level means that farmers will calculate their short and long-lived emissions. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment, through a single centralised calculator using existing tools and software systems. And that each farmer, what that means is that each farmer and grower will clearly see the direct benefit and cost of their decisions on their business. Importantly, this gives more control and we think is more motivating than a nationally set price. What split gas means, and we've got experts in the room on this, so hopefully I'll get this right. But split gas means we're recognising the different impacts of methane in the atmosphere, and that methane does not have to be reduced to the same level as carbon. You will be aware that so for example, methane, it needs to be 10% below 2017 levels by 2030, and nitrous oxide and carbon dioxide to net zero by 2050. What incentives means is that farmers will get a reduction in the levy they have to pay for using certain practices and technologies, such as inhibitors, forages, animal genetics, as they become available. That's what incentives means. Now, on the recognition for sequestration, what that means is that farmers will get a financial offset reflecting the amount of carbon captured in vegetation, such as riparian planting and shelter belts. In that system, what that all means is that the money collected from that system and the levy will be used to fund that system and also invest in research and development of new practices and technology to reduce emissions. In terms of oversight, the partnership has worked hard to have an inclusive oversight and governance system, which we're recommending. And at the peak of that is an oversight board with sector representatives who would have input into setting the levy and investing the funds. Below that, there'll be an implementation agency who will do all the work in terms of the detailed work. All of this adds up to, we expect that this system to lead to additional methane emissions reductions of between 4 and 5.5% on top of already expected reductions. So together, the recommended pricing system, which in effect is incentivising efficiencies and take-up of mitigation technologies, and current and new on-farm actions added to the reductions from the waste sector will achieve the target of 10% reduction in methane by 2030. There will be some cost, but the benefit will be maintaining our reputation as world leaders in low emission food production and keeping us ahead of our competitors. And as I've said earlier, meet the expectations of our customers. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been an amazing journey for us over the last 2 years. I'm very proud of the partnership. There are times when we've had some pretty robust and tricky, difficult conversations, and I'm sure my partners will mention some of those. But the partnership has held together, in fact, has been stronger. In my experience of 35 years working in the agricultural community, I have never seen such collaboration, communication, active conversation, difficult conversation, but we have got to a point which I'm particularly and personally very proud to have reached. We all firmly believe this is the best approach to pricing agricultural emissions, and it demonstrates the commitment of our sector to play its fair part in meeting New Zealand's climate commitments. Ladies and gentlemen, I am now going to ask some of our partners to say a few brief words, and they will come to the microphone. So could I please ask, firstly, let's have Jim Vanderpoel from Dairy New Zealand. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Michael. DNZ is proud to be part of this world, what we think is a world-leading partnership and what we've been able to achieve on behalf of all New Zealand farmers and growers. Our entire primary sector has come together to help achieve this. It hasn't been easy, as Michael said, and we've all had to work hard to find solutions, but we've come out the other side with a clear pathway forward. This kind of collaboration is exactly what our farmers and growers expect of us. As a sector, we fought hard for the opportunity to develop an alternative to the emissions trading scheme, and it's important we deliver something credible, which we really believe we have. Special thanks must go to the thousands of farmers who engaged with the process and gave pretty robust feedback through the roadshow meetings we had. And we have a stronger proposal as a result of that. And we hope our farmers can see that feedback reflected in the final recommendations report. We're confident the option presented to government is a creditable alternative to the emissions trading scheme that will reduce agricultural emissions for New Zealand in a way that works for farmers too. It's a win-win. And in that we will achieve the best outcome for all New Zealanders, and as a country, we should celebrate that. Positively, the He Waka Eke Noa system is expected to reduce methane emissions by between 4 to 5.5% by 2030, depending on the availability of technology. But alongside other actions underway already to reduce emissions, He Waka Eke Noa will help achieve the methane emissions reductions targets in line with the legislated 10%, which was always one of the objectives. Kiwi farmers always have been, or are, the world's lowest carbon footprint for on-farm milk production, or production generally. He Waka Eke Noa will help us maintain that competitive advantage so we can continue to contribute to our families, the economy, and our local communities. Thanks, Michael.
Kia ora, Jim, thank you. I'll now invite Nikki Hislop from Beef and Lamb New Zealand. Thank you, Nikki.
Kia ora. Today is a watershed moment for New Zealand and the New Zealand farmers. And the process to get here, as has been said, has not always been easy, but we are committed as farmers in our role in mitigating climate change. While we know climate change and methane is a discussion being held internationally, so it is not just in New Zealand, we are the first country, however, to look to put a price on biological emissions. This has been an important collaboration between our sectors, Māori and government, which has seen the primary sector develop and put forward a credible, tailored system to reduce our emissions. As food producers, sheep and beef farmers are willing to play our part in addressing climate change. We see firsthand the effects of climate change, including droughts and extreme weather events, so we know just what is at stake. We genuinely believe this framework is better for farmers, rural communities, New Zealand, and our planet. The alternative ETS is not, and was never going to be suitable for agriculture. It does not reflect the methane, the different warming potential of our emissions, and it does not recognise all the sequestration that is on our farms that we are really proud of. What we are proposing is better for wider New Zealand because it will send the right signals for change. The He Waka Eke Noa recommended system is as much about rewarding farmers for sequestration and practice change as it is about putting a levy price on methane and nitrous oxide. We are proposing a farm level approach that relies on in-depth and practical knowledge of our farming systems. It's been developed with the input and feedback from thousands of farmers right across the country when we held 55 roadshows up and down the country. This has not been easy, and we have had to make some compromises along the way. But let me be really clear. What is being recommended today has genuine financial implications for our farmers, but we are still committed to play our part. Beef and Land New Zealand has released modelling today that shows the sensitivity of our sheep and beef systems to a price on emissions. That's why it is vital that we take a cautious approach to pricing, as was done when the original ETS framework was established. We really urge the government to take up this recommendation, given the widespread industry support on a scale not seen before. The fact that 13 industry partners are all willingly supporting this recommendation signifies just how important it is. This is an opportunity for government to work with our sector to put in place and to continue to develop an effective system that has the support of the agricultural community and will ultimately incentivise farmers to reduce our emissions. It is also an opportunity for New Zealand, both farmers and our industry, to continue to be leaders internationally, and in doing so, keep beautiful New Zealand farm produce as one of the most preferred choices that our customers have. We know we can do this. He Waka Eke Noa is the right approach. Thank you.
Kia ora, Nikki, thank you. I now invite Tracy Haupapa to Okaha Federation of Māori Authorities. Kia ora, Tracy.
I ngā mane ngā reo i ngā mātā waka kua taima I rungi ngā huatango te wā ko tēnei te mihi kia koutou katoa huri noa kia tātou rā I hoama. Kia koe te tiamane Michael nei rā te mihi mō tō karakia hei whakawātea te hui nei huri noa kia tātou rā I hoama tēnei e tū mai nei I rungi ngā mātauranga o te ao Māori o te ao huri huri hoki. My name is Tracy Haupapa. I'm proud to be the chairman of the Federation of Māori Authorities. FOMA is a proud signatory to the primary sector climate change commitment, and we are proud to stand alongside of our signatory partners, both industry representatives and government, in the launch of this program. People have talked about how difficult sometimes our discussions have been, and that's because this is important. This is important to our whānau and to our whenua. This is important to our country and to our future. And so there's a fair amount of passion, commitment and verve in our conversations and discussions. We want to acknowledge Kelly Forster and her team. The steering group team have worked extraordinarily hard to get everyone to this point today. So tēnei te mihi kia koe te mārei kura. Let me also acknowledge Hilton Collier, our ag expert for Te Aukaha, which is the Māori agribusiness unit for FOMA in this particular report. FOMA's stance on climate change has always been about our people and our environment. We put that front and centre in all of our deliberations and discussions, not only in terms of He Waka Eke Noa, but in terms of life, because that's how we roll. The He Waka Eke Noa report is an important starting point for the systems change needed to move beyond a profit-driven primary industry, which comes at a significant cost and is unsustainable for Aotearoa. FOMA exists to grow the wealth and prosperity of our members and of all Māori for Aotearoa. We advocate strongly values over volume approach, and we base this upon a te ao Māori view and a tikanga kaupapa Māori approach. Māori have always operated within this values-based system where we seek to live and work in harmony with our land and our environment like our colleagues. And so even when economic incentives have sought to drive different behaviours, and we will continue to do so. This te ao Māori worldview is, in FOMA's opinion and other learned colleagues' opinion, central to the transformational change that is needed for us to be part of the climate change adaptation process for Aotearoa. So today, FOMA is proud to stand with our partners in this, industry and government, with regards to the release of this report. Today, FOMA adds He Waka Eke Noa report to the long list of transformational initiatives we have achieved for Māori and Māori land holders, owners and managers over the last 50 years. Today, I'm repeating it for emphasis, we have ensured that Māori have a seat at the table and where the significant size, scale and influence of ahu whenua Māori are recognised as critical success factors in the success of Aotearoa's a primary industry. Anei rā te mihi a kia tātou rā me uru kahikatea.
Well, tēnā te mihi, Tracy, thank you so much. Let's now move, if I could ask Stephen Benema to come to the dais, please. Thank you, Stephen.
Good morning. For the start, I would like to thank Kelly and Michael and Mike, who isn't here today, to steer us through this whole year, couple of years, to get where we are today, because that has been a big ask. The foundation of arable research supports He Waka Eke Noa's recommendation to go with the farm-level split gas levy. We believe it will provide arable growers the greatest recognition of the work they have done and will do to reduce emissions from their farming businesses. In the consultation meetings earlier this year, we asked our growers to consider all the options put to them and asked them the following questions. How will each option impact your farm profit and the wider industry? How much control does each option give you? Which option will reward practical on-farm efforts to reduce emissions? And which option will lead to the greatest reduction on farm emissions? At the end of the consultation period, and having considered the questions above, arable growers showed clear preference for the farm-level split gas levy. We acknowledge that some growers will find the financial impact of emissions payments under the farm-level split gas levy challenging and are worried. It's not about blame or punishment, but about finding a solution to reduce emissions, and we believe this system is vastly more suitable than any alternative. And I would like to invite Minister Shaw and Minister O'Connor to join us in this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Can I now ask Malcolm Bailey from the Dairy Companies Association of New Zealand to speak? Thank you, Malcolm.
Thank you, Michael. We're getting well through the people and a lot of points have been made, but I'll just reinforce a couple of them. Firstly, DCANZ is very pleased to be part of this whole initiative, and we're very pleased that we've got a clear recommendation to set the levy at farm level. For a price to be an effective part of behaviour change, it's absolutely necessary for it to work at the farm level and be able to recognise a full suite of emissions reducing actions that are undertaken by farmers. Dairy companies have been working and will continue to work with their suppliers to meet the farm emissions reporting and planning milestones that are crucial foundations for a farm level system. It has always been important to dairy companies that our actions in New Zealand make a positive contribution to addressing the dual global challenge of climate change and nutrition. For this purpose, I highlight that an affordable marginal price signal is an important part of these recommendations. This has been created through the combination of low levies and specific action-based incentives. The program analysis has confirmed that there are risks of emissions leakage. To play the best and most credible role we can in global solutions, it is important that our pricing design is one that will minimise these risks. It is important that, to the greatest extent possible, pricing supports emissions being reduced by better farming practices and technologies rather than through production cuts. Dairy companies will be maintaining their work with farmers to continue achieving the lower emissions product footprints that global customers are looking for. Farm level pricing that focuses on incentivising and supporting the advancement and the uptake of opportunities to lower the emissions associated with each unit of milk that we produce will support these efforts. Finally, big thank you to you, Michael, Kelly, the program steering group and all our partners for all the hard work that's gone into this. And just a final comment, we know that a lot of producers, growers out there are apprehensive about this. While we're sensitive to that, it also says there's something really significant here. This is meaningful. If they were all relaxed, would we really be talking about the change that we're looking for? So the tension there is a positive one. Thank you.
Kia ora, Malcolm. Let's ask Surma Karapiva from the Meat Industry Association. Thank you, Surma.
Thank you, Michael. One of the good things about being last is that most of the key points have already been made by my esteemed partners in this journey, so hopefully I can keep my comments reasonably short. But it is important that as meat processors and exporters, we do add our voice and our support to the He Waka Eke Noa recommendations that are being put forward to government and have been developed as a result of really hard consultation and collaboration between all the 13 partners. The recommendations that have been put to government demonstrate that the primary sector as a whole is seriously committed to playing its part, its fair part in addressing climate change issues today and going forward into the future. New Zealand is a leader in the world to address agricultural emissions. This is a point that we need to be cognizant of and remember as we go forward in this process. Emissions pricing system that we are recommending will demonstrate to New Zealanders and to our global consumers that we are committed to producing environmentally sustainable red meat and that our story is indeed backed by science and modern farm practices that address the issues of today and are well placed to continue to address the issues of tomorrow. We believe that this option is the only way to ensure that New Zealand sheep and beef sector can continue to be a global leader in climate action while remaining profitable and viable. This option also complements what meat processors are doing on their own part and substantially investing to remove coal-fired boilers from the operation to further reduce emissions along the supply chain. And make no mistake, and I think my partners have said this several times, there is a lot at stake for our sector here, and this is not going to be easy. As food companies, we generate, at least the meat industry, generates almost $10 billion worth of export revenue. Overall, the meat sector supports more than 90,000 jobs, primarily in the rural communities right across New Zealand. So there is a lot riding on getting this recommendation and the process forward for us to ensure that we can continue to play our weight in supporting New Zealand's economic future. And it is crucial that we get the policy settings right. And as others before me have said, the ETS is not it. The ETS would act as a blunt tax on production without the incentives and the support farmers need to reduce their emissions, and it would certainly not result in the outcomes the government or New Zealand is seeking from the primary industries. And given the likely ETS prices in the future, putting agriculture into the ETS would have a devastating impact not only in the red meat sector, but also on primary industries and our rural communities at large. The meat processing and exporting sectors supports pricing for on-farm emission paid at the farm level. That way, farmers will pay only for the emissions that their farm produces. It gives farmers direct control over their emissions, and equally as important, it reflects what farmers told us during the consultation that they want. They want the ability to charter their own path, and they want the ability to take responsibility for their farming businesses today and into the future. The money that is raised through this levy will be used to support the uptake of new technologies that reduce emissions and support better farm practices and better farm management, including recognising sequestration outside of the ETS. We urge the government to accept this fair, practical and sensible option and to continue to work in partnership with the primary industries and the primary sectors to make this a success. And as processors and exporters, we stand committed to work with our farmer suppliers to assist and support them in recording and reporting their emissions to ensure the success of this world-first agricultural pricing system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Surma, and thank you very much, colleagues, and thank you very much, everyone, for still being here with us. I did want to mention Ian Walker, Chair of the Dairy Industry, has asked me to say on his behalf that finding ways to reduce emissions from fruit production without threatening the viability of farming is one of the most important issues society has to deal with. As an innovative industry with a great environmental record, dairy farming wants to remain part of that conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll now open up for questions, and thank you for listening patiently to us. I'll open the floor for questions. The way I propose the conversation we have about having that conversation is that unless the question is directed to a person directly on, I'll receive the question and then direct the answer to someone I think appropriate. We do have all our technical specialists in the room, so after the press conference we'll be available as we share a cup of tea to have those conversations if there are ones of particular technical merit. So we can, I will direct that to outside the meeting if so required. So thank you so much for your time, and let's take some questions, please. Yes.
Possibly for Malcolm Bailey, but I wonder how you strike a balance between leakage risk on the one hand and the risk of fresh protectionism in New Zealand and through, say, carbon tariffs. New Zealand doesn't seem to be ambitious enough with respect to national.
Yeah, that's a great question. Malcolm, do you want to take that question, please? Thank you.
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge.
Just take the mic there, Malcolm, if you want. Yeah, thank you. There you go.
I think it's important to acknowledge where we start this. We're already in pole position in terms of our emissions intensity, so, emissions per kilogram of our output. So when we raise concern about emissions leakage, we're very conscious that we have joined a global agreement where we're talking about globally achieving the goals. So the last thing we want to see is a pricing system that isn't right in New Zealand, that reduces production in New Zealand. That production is replaced somewhere else in the world because we have to feed people, and that production will be at average emissions per kilogram of output significantly more than what we're at. So the world would go backwards in emission terms in that situation. So in terms of your point around trade barriers or non-tariff barriers, I'm not sure quite what you're getting at. We don't want to be driving trade barriers through this process. In fact, we want the opposite. We want, and we've got an issue right now, for example, with the free trade agreement we're negotiating with the European Union. We've got an opportunity for those countries to recognise that we actually have a very, very good emissions profile that consumers in those countries will recognise, and so they should be opening their borders to us. So in no way do we want to be part of restricting trade on this point.
Kia ora, thank you. Thanks, Malcolm. Other questions, please? Yes, go ahead.
The sequestration, farmers are going to be allowed to earn discounts on the levy for sequestration dating back to 2008, but only paying for emissions from when the scheme comes into effect. Why that difference? It allowed people to use past planting to offset their current emissions, essentially.
So the question was about sequestration, the 2008. So the answer to that is no. Does anyone want to take that question? Maybe Andrew, or come on, Andrew. Yeah, you can speak to that, Andrew, please.
It's back planting from.
Take the mic there, or come up here, Andrew. Come stand beside me.
it's planting from 2008 that you can claim on, so it's the additional sequestration that's happening this year, so not everything back to 2008. We did ask for that in Feds, but we tried to push that one, but yeah, it didn't roll, sorry.
Thank you. Does that make sense? Yes. Thank you very much. Thanks, Andrew. I knew Andrew would get to the dais. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. Other questions? Any other questions? Richard, you got one? No?
It's actually to Andrew.
Okay. Richard, thank you.
Does Federated Farmers fully support the proposals?
Well, we've signed up to it. I mean, there's stuff in there we're pretty happy with. There's stuff in there that we had to swallow a few rats on a couple of things. But I think every partner had to swallow some rats on everything. So we're still there. I mean, I see, I don't think it's quite perfect just yet. I think the bones are there. There's more work that's needed. There's more detail to be worked out. But the bones are there. As everyone said, it's a far better proposal than the ETS. The modelling shows you that, the numbers we've used in the modelling is the ETS counterfactual. And, you push those out far enough, the price goes up high enough, and it looks pretty ugly. And it creates emissions leakage, like Malcolm was saying, which is not what we want. It's, getting the worst of both worlds. So, yeah, where we're at, it's, obviously would love that there wasn't a price at all, but here we are. It was the option of ETS or come up with something better, so we've been part of the journey to come up with something better.
Kia ora, Andrew. Thanks, Richard. Other questions? Any other questions? Fantastic. Yes, no, go ahead.
The computer system, so you guys are confident that that's all going to be sorted and ready to go, no glitches to make sure that...
Great question. Yes, for those in the room who are being involved in IT projects, I think we can't guarantee any zero glitches. What we have done, though, is that in terms of the implementation from 2025, using a more simplified approach to that, and then to 2028, to give a bit more time to make sure that we have a staged introduction to it. So there's no doubt that putting 23,000 farmers into a system is complex, much more complex than others. So what we have worked hard at, and the partnership is very confident about, is that the staged introduction to that, and the work that we've done pre that is we're confident that we can do that. Yep, very confident. Thank you.
Can I just add?
Yes,
Michael,
go ahead, Michael.
We've already got existing databases, and the IRD maintains a perfect one in many ways. Every one of the 23,000 odd people will already be registered in that system. We have had a lot of input from the farm accounting fraternity, who make it clear that it's possible to develop some algorithms that can pick up data that we already generate and then calculate emissions through from that. And so in a way, you can deliver your annual emissions tax payment, if it comes to that, through some existing infrastructure. So the idea that we have to go and build a massive IT system from scratch, this doesn't seem to sit right. And this is an issue that has to be worked through, but this is where more practically minded farmers sort of come into play, and they go, well, what are the resources? How do we get there? And we find ways through.
Because, yeah, I guess the technology's there, but it's sort of, user-friendliness. I used to walk 91 teaching farmers how to feed online, and I know there are a few that aren't so tech sort of friendly. So, is this going to be something that's able to be taken on, by everybody, not just the techs?
Well, I think there's a hell of an incentive to get fully into this, and that comes from the fact that if you don't do a good job, you're likely to be paying a bigger bill than if you do a good job. Mm-hmm. No better incentive than to tune in and get it done.
I think we might explore that question a bit more. Andrew wants to say something, because it's a really important point. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I'd just add, data collaboration is a sort of pet peeve for me in terms of frustrations on farm with, you know, like in a few weeks' time I'll have to be entering all the Fonterra data, which you'll be well aware of, all the red pages, etc. Have to open up multiple screens and write it all down on a bit of paper and then enter it back into another screen. So having data interoperability is going to be critical. There's been work going on for a couple of years now on that, and that's going to be, I think we've, you know, through this work, I actually think one of the benefits might be, a co-benefit for farmers will be that it'll help improve that data connectivity for all the water reporting and all the other reporting we've got to do and help simplify that. Particularly, you know, if we can get like production data, etc., automatically going into these calculators, whatever they are, and not the need for a farmer like me to be sitting at my desk having to write it down on a bit of paper and then re-enter it into another computer program, that removes the need for auditing because there's not going to be the chance I'm going to miss a decimal place or something like that. So this has the potential benefit of prompting us to actually make a better system for farmers that actually makes their lives simpler in terms of all that reporting that's required of us.
Thanks, Andrew. Yes, please.
Hey, the Green Party have come out just now and criticised this plan. They've said that it leaves more questions than answers. They've said it's not clear how this proposal will help the sector reduce emissions. They've said it looks like you were given a hallway pass and used it to wag class. What do you make of that?
So the question for a pick for the live stream was that whether this is effective. The Greenpeace is saying that it's not. So Green Party. So what I'd say to that, and I'll ask partners to perhaps chip in, is that we in good faith have come together to work out a system which we think is the best for New Zealand, the best for New Zealand farmers, the best for actually the economy. We've just got to remember this fact that we are still, like Olalumpa, a biological economy. 80% of our exports come from the primary sector. 1 in 7 people are employed in the primary sector. It's 11% of GDP. This is not a trivial sector, and so we've done our very level best as a partnership with all of the factors at play to make the best system which we think will support Aotearoa New Zealand as a whole. Is it perfect? No. Can it be adaptive and changed to suit different circumstances? Yes, and I think that's a really important point that hasn't been raised yet. The system that we've got can be adapted and changed to suit as incentives come on, as new mitigations come on stream, and the globe changes. So I think that we've come up with a system which is best fit for purpose for the New Zealand economic biological system as it plays out today. Maybe others might want to chime in there, please.
I think it'd be fair to say that we think they're actually wrong, because the actual emissions, if we were doing it through the ETS, would actually have a much larger financial impact, but actually would not achieve the targets, whereas He Waka Eke Noa actually will. It's set up to actually so we can meet the legislative targets, whereas the ETS, which is the alternative, would have a much greater financial impact, which would have an impact on all New Zealanders, but it actually doesn't achieve the targets.
Thank you. Stephen, please.
Yes, Michael. That question of that comment from the Green Party, it was to be expected, and that's normal, as they should, and come up with a question: why are you doing this? We want to reduce emissions, and basically only punishing people doesn't get us anywhere. And we haven't got the answers today. Well, the answer of today is halve the cow herd and stop using fertilizer. But in reality, if you really think about it, that's not a good answer. So we have to come up with a better answer, and that's why we need research to help us to get this done. And this approach gives us the bestest chance to get there where we want.
Kia ora. Thank you. All done? Kia ora, everyone. Well, thank you so much for your time and patience, and a big day for New Zealand, and I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank our partners. I want to thank you all for this, and we are now beginning on another pathway, and so thank you all so much for. So I'll finish with karakia to finish our one in the right way. Let's finish with a short one. There's lots of karakia. Here we go. Kia whakaari e te tapu. Kia wātea ai te ara. Kia turuku wakata ai. Haumi e hui e. Tā iki e. Restrictions are moved aside so the pathways are clear so that we can return to our everyday activities we draw together affirm. Kia ora mai tātou. Thank you, everybody. Please join us for a kai and the foyer. Thank you. Here we are. Yeah, no, it was really, really great. Kia ora. Oh, tēnā koe. Nice to meet you too. Oh, thank you. It was really important for you.